Greetings from Tokyo, my dear friends. This is Daisuke, and I very much hope that this video finds you well and in very good spirits wherever you are in the world. And today, if you don't mind, I would like to continue on with some thoughts and comments that I have with regard to the films found in the filmography of the very fascinating filmmaker from Japan, whose name is Takeshi Kitano. The film that he made that was released in 1991 is a remarkable film for a number of reasons. And the name of the film I'm referring to is あの夏一番静かな海, which is or can be translated into English as that summer, the calmest sea, calmest ocean, or the quietest sea, quietest ocean. It is often referred to, I think, in English as a scene at the sea. So for those of you who know this film from English releases, it'll probably be under that title. But this film is in Japanese, あの夏一番静かな海. And it is a film that is, in many ways, a film that can be described as being a simple tale of a young couple, or a young man and a young woman, and how surfing, the idea of surfing and the notion of surfing becomes a preoccupation and a love and a focus of this particular young man, and the various adventures or misadventures of a day-to-day scale that this couple go through in relation to this love of surfing. And that's essentially what the film is about, essentially. So it might seem to be quite simple on its terms. However, it is a remarkably, I would say, a remarkably complex work that seems simple, but I would argue is not. And I think that's what makes this film, one of the reasons why this film is so artistically brilliant the way it is. Now, the film operates on a number of traits that I think we have seen in past Kitano films. In other words, we see this way that the camera is very methodical and almost focuses in on the notion of stillness and capturing the essence of a look on a face, not necessarily seeking out a high emotional register of a particular performance, but rather using stillness, close-ups, and editing in order to achieve a sense or feeling in the viewer as to what is going on and or what a particular character might be feeling or thinking in a given point of the narrative. So we've seen this, of course, in past Kitano works, in English Boiling Point, or also in English Violent Cop. We also see the way that comic sketches play themselves out in the feature film narrative context. As we remember, the artist Takeshi Kitano, is also a comedian and entertainer, and he's known by his screen name or performer name, Beat Takeshi. And so he's very much into the comedy scene, the comedy sketch scene, and we see a lot of great comedic designed elements of this. The supporting characters, the surrounding characters that are on the periphery, but then they gain prominence in certain aspects of the film, how they react to surfing and how they become hooked on surfing, and there's a funny element to that. There are scenes involving surfing competitions and the way that people talk. There is a certain comedic element about that. There is the way that the main characters are seen interacting or maybe not interacting with the environment around them. And sometimes that has a nice, funny, humorous edge to it. But it's never done in a way that is, I would say, also walking the line between the humorous and the cruel. There might be certain butts of the joke, as it were, but the overall effect, I think, is not one that we see in the realm of, say, the morally ambiguous or the kind of frightening or horrifying that we might have seen in other works by Kitano, which is a roundabout way for me to say that this film is very extraordinary, at least in the context of Kitano's filmography thus far, in that there are no outward displays of flashy crime-related violence in this. There are no scenes of the shootouts or anything of that nature. This is all this is all to say that it is a character piece. It's a mood piece, and it is a piece about human beings and relationships and love of surfing, and how that is both a direct love but also a kind of metaphor for the way in which we as people can become so enamored by something and it becomes part of our lives in a very endearing and loving sort of way. So that is one aspect where I think this is at once consistent with Kitano's work, but also very extraordinary and thus a brilliant turn in the way that Kitano's filmography seems to be progressing thus far anyway in 1991. Another very fascinating aspect of this is the use of dialogue or non-use of dialogue, because the way that Kitano portrays the story between the two main characters here, Hiroko Oshima and Claude Maki, is remarkable. There is no dialogue that is used or employed when we see these characters interact with each other and their stories. And it is therefore a film that is wordless, at least vis-a-vis their own reactions with each other. There are, of course, other characters in the film that have speaking roles, and we do hear sounds and we do hear dialogue moments from other characters. But vis-a-vis these two main characters themselves, there is none of that, which is remarkable because they hold our attention through and through, all the way throughout the entirety of the film and when they appear. And we can understand what their story is, what their concerns are, what it is they are trying to do in a given episode or moment of the narrative of the film. We can sense what it is they're feeling, and we can sense what it is they are yearning for with respect to themselves and their relationship, but also with respect to surfing and this love of this thing that becomes more than just a hobby, right? So it is, I think, a really beautiful, almost heart-achingly type of beauty that's being shown here because of the delicate nature of the way that Kitano is treating these characters. There is an almost sweet, pure innocence that is being employed. And I always like to think that that sweet, pure innocence is given cinematic voice in technical terms by the fact that Kitano seems to be wanting to rely on the very essence of cinema storytelling, which is the idea of pictures and the use of pictures. In other words, it's almost like a silent film playing itself out, at least in the context of one of the main components of the film, that is the relationship between these two main characters. And so we have silent film dynamics that are employed in this film from 1991, and employed in a film where in other parts we have sounds and dialogue that are used in the Kitano edged sort of way. And so this is a brilliant turn, a really brilliant turn. It shows on the one hand a concern for different styles. It seems on the one hand that Kitano is, as a filmmaker, concerned with trying to tell stories in ways that are comfortable to him, And it also shows the importance that he holds to the image and also editing, the almost Pavlovian way that editing can have the effect. And so this is very, very important, I think, in terms of its place in Kitano's filmography. Also, it shows a real way that he is able to create tender portraits of human beings in, as I say, this heart-achingly beautiful type of way. He has a real flair for this. He has a knack for showing the essence of the human heart with seemingly very little that is shown or heard on screen. And I say seemingly because I think actually there's a lot of preparation and a lot of care taken when trying to decide the timing of edits, when trying to decide when exactly we should employ or he should employ a close-up versus when we should look at the scenery writ large. The way that stillness is employed, the way that characters walk and move, this is also very important. There's a seemingly great significance placed on things whereas at the same time it seems to be very much simple and thus very pure and innocent. And so I think all of this is to say that 100% I feel that this is a marvel of a cinematic achievement that is also telling a very heartwarming story with consequence and action and reaction and heart and lightness and comedy and also seriousness that is all told, again, with these elements that relying on the silent film grammar, but still in the context of the great and now even further developing filmography grammar, that is the films of Takeshi Kitano. We should say also that Kitano himself, or Beat Takeshi, does not make an appearance here. And so that may or may not, depending on your point of view, be a significant fact or aspect when looking at this film and seeing how it might feel a part of, or maybe an exception to the works that we see of Kitano overall writ large. I mean, from my point of view, though, I think, and I think it's the point of view of a lot of people, it is a very significant and very, very Kitano work. And it is one where we see, or we are reminded of the fact that he really cares about the characters. And it reminds us, too, that even in his more so-called violent films, he has his camera caring for the characters, and we understand the ebbs and flows of their concerns and their motivations. And that's the situation here as well. And so we have at the focus not necessarily the gunplay between cops and gangsters, but here we have the focus being a love of this thing which is surfing and the sea and sitting on the beach and reading magazines and trying to get a surfboard and maybe practicing and succeeding and failing, maybe going to the next level, the next stage, and along the way, a companionship and interaction with the people that we like and we love, and a whole range of human emotions that are exhibited through that process. So this is, I think, therefore to say that this is very consistent with Takeshi's approach and his camera and the way that it has a concern for having us as viewers understand and appreciate the ebbs and flows and the concerns and the emotions and the commitment, if you will, of people that are in the world that are portrayed by Takeshi Kitano's camera, especially this film, あの夏一番静かな海. I should say also that we see the interaction with the filmmaker, with the musician, Joe Hisaishi. And so this is very, very important as well. And we will see the music landscape play out through a very significant component of Beat Takeshi's or Takeshi Kitano's filmography. And we also should point out the fact that Takeshi Kitano is credited as being an editor as well. So he's director, and this is Masayuki Mori produced film, and then this is written by Kitano and it's edited by Kitano. Kitano. And so this is also very significant because, as we know from Kitano's films, he is also an editor of his films. And when we realize too that going forward, his editing is part of his style. This is, I think, a very interesting aspect of this part of his filmography. And so we should always pay attention to that as well. So this is all to say that this film, therefore, is incredibly important in the context of his filmography. Also, as a film in and of itself, it is tender, it is warm, it is beautiful, it is clever, it is a cinematic treat. It is simple yet complex. It is silent and yet it has sounds. It has it's a tender story, but it also has real depth of a simple love story, but also has real depth of profound either heights of happiness or depths of sadness. And so it is all here, I think, in terms of the mapping of the human heart and its goings on in the context of this day-to-day life in Japan, as depicted through the camera eye of Takeshi Kitano in this film, which is known in English as A Scene at the Sea, or in Japanese under its Japanese title, あの夏一番静かな海. Okay, my friends, so that's it for now. And so until we meet again, please be happy and healthy and well, and please keep on watching a lot of great movies. Thank you so much, as always, for your time. I really appreciate it. Stay strong, stay safe, and cheers.